Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has urged the world to raise its voice for the Kashmiri women facing Indian brutalities in occupied Kashmir. In a tweet coinciding with Kashmir Women's Resistance Day, Khan said Indian forces have been committing war crimes against women in the occupied valley. The Prime Minister said Kashmiri women's suffering has multiplied after India stripped the region of its autonomy on 5th of August. Indian troops gang-raped 100 women in a siege and search operation in the Kupwara district on 23rd of February 1991. The day has been marked as the Kashmiri Women's Resistance Day ever since. Occupied Kashmir has been under a complete lockdown since 5th of August, when New Delhi ended the constitutional regulations for the region. In India, hundreds of women protesting against the new Citizenship Act have blocked northeast Delhi's Jafarabad town. The Indian government has been facing countrywide demonstrations against the controversial act for the last 3 months. The women raised slogans of freedom and said they will not move from the site till the centre revokes the law. They have defied multiple efforts by the police to disperse them since last night. Meanwhile, members of a radical Hindu group have barged into houses in Maharashtra state demanding proof of citizenship from the residents. The extremists claim they have captured 3 illegal immigrants from Pune city and handed them over to police. Meanwhile, Indian activists have called the meeting of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Donald Trump a fascist alliance. In an open letter, over 160 activists protested against Trump's upcoming visit to India. The letter said the alliance between these two leaders is dangerous for both Indians and the whole world. It said the Modi-Trump alliance is attempting to erode democracy and curb freedom of speech and religion. The letter read, India and the US have seen a rise of authoritarian politics in recent years, with Modi and Trump at the helm. In Afghanistan, mobile phone services have been restored across swathes of Taliban-controlled areas. The development follows a partial truce with the group held for a second day. The Taliban, the US and Afghan forces are currently overseeing a week-long reduction in violence. In a statement, the local official said all the telecom networks have not worked in Kunduz province at night for the last 3 years. But he said most networks have now been restored. And officials in the Badghis province also confirmed the development. Thousands of telecommunication towers are in insurgency-hit areas are vulnerable to the attack. There have been reports of skirmishes in Balkh province, but no major clashes have taken place. The partial truce is expected to set the conditions for Washington and the Taliban to sign a deal in Doha on 29th of February. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has accused foreign media of using coronavirus to sabotage parliamentary elections by discouraging voters. Iran's health ministry says the outbreak has claimed 8 lives in the country so far. Khamenei said the media tried to dissuade Iranian voters, but is resorting to excuse of disease and the virus. He said this negative campaign by foreign media started a few months ago and intensified close to the polls. The Supreme Leader said all the Iranians should be vigilant and ready to foil such attacks. He appreciated people's participation in the elections despite all the propaganda. Earlier state media said the conservatives have made early gains as counting is underway. President Hassan Rouhani says Iran has never closed the door of dialogue with EU over the 2015 nuclear deal. Meeting Dutch Foreign Minister Stef Blok in Tehran, Rouhani said the deal has major regional and global significance. The president said Washington's withdrawal from the deal was detrimental to its own people, region and the whole world. Rouhani said Iran is interested in warming and maintaining cordial relations with the European Union. Earlier, Blok met Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif and discussed tense since the US withdrew from the JCPOA in May 2018. The Khalifa Haftar-led Libyan National Army claims it has killed 16 Turkish fighters since Ankara moved its troops into the country. The statement comes a day after Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said his country's military suffered casualties in Libya. The Turkish president didn't specify the exact number of troops killed. Erdogan also said Turkey-backed forces neutralized 100 rival fighters in the country. Earlier, he said Ankara is fighting Haftar with the teams from the Syrian National Army. This was the Turkish president's first admission of the presence of Turkish-backed Syrian rebels fighting in Libya. On Friday, Libyan strongman Haftar vowed to fight Turkish forces if the peace talks in Geneva failed. The oil-rich country has been mired in chaos since 2011. 8 people are killed in Turkey after a 5.7 magnitude earthquake struck its one province near Iran border. The health ministry said 21 others are injured, out of which 8 are in critical condition. The official said over 1,000 buildings collapsed after the quake. The European Mediterranean Seismological Center said the earthquake had a depth of 5 kilometers. The U.S. Geological Survey said epicenter of the quake was near Iranian village of Habbaj-e-Olia, less than 10 kilometers from the Turkish border. Iranian officials said jolts were felt in the country, but there were no immediate reports of deaths. Israeli forces have shot dead a Palestinian, accusing him of placing a bomb near the Gaza border. The Gaza Health Ministry says 2 other civilians were injured by Israeli fighting as they tried to collect the body. Later, an Israeli bulldozer pulled out the body of the slain Palestinian youth. Meanwhile, Israeli occupation forces detained 7 Palestinians during raids across the occupied West Bank. This brings up the number of arrested Palestinians to 20 during the last 2 days. The EU says Israel's plan to build residential units in East Jerusalem is illegal under international regulations. In a statement, EU Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell called on Israel to reconsider the plan, saying it threatens the viability of a two-state solution. Borrell said such steps would cut the geographic contiguity between Jerusalem and Bethlehem and isolate Palestinian communities living in the area. He said the bloc won't recognize any unilateral changes to the pre-1967 borders. Borrell also criticized Washington's Middle East peace plan, saying it runs contrary to international law and the UN Security Council resolutions. On Friday, the EU Foreign Policy Chief met Palestine's Foreign Minister Riyad Maliki in Brussels. Borrell reaffirmed the bloc's continued commitment to the negotiated two-state solution. UN Chief Antonio Guterres has urged the Security Council to authorize a new passage point for humanitarian aid to reach northeast Syria. In a report, Guterres said the transit point should be made on the Turkish border to supply medical aid to Idlib. Guterres said from a security and logistical perspective, the Tal Abyad border crossing will be the most feasible option. The Secretary General said 2 other passage points on the Iraqi border were studied but lacked logistical capacity. Earlier in January, Western members of the UNSC called on Guterres to provide new options. This came after the Council, under pressure from Russia, reduced the number of authorized border crossings. In Yemen, the Saudi-led coalition says its naval forces have foiled an imminent terrorist attack by Houthi rebels in the southern Red Sea. In a statement, coalition spokesman Colonel Turki al-Maliki said they destroyed an unmanned boat loaded with explosives which was launched from Hudaydah province. Maliki says the planned attack posed a threat to regional and international security as well as maritime trade. He said the use of Hudaydah for operations was a glaring violation of a UN-led peace deal in the disputed port city. Yemen lies along the Bab al-Mandab Strait in the Red Sea, which is one of the most important trade routes from the Middle East to Europe. Saudi Arabia paused oil shipments through Bab al-Mandab for more than a week in 2018 after the Houthis attacked 2 ships. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders has earned a decisive victory in the Democratic presidential caucuses in the state of Nevada. With 43% of the ballots counted, Sanders has secured 47% of the vote, ahead of the former Vice President Joe Biden on 21%. Former Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg trailed behind at 14%, while Senators Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar posted single digits. Primaries in South Carolina will be held on 29th of February, followed by Super Tuesday on 3rd of March. Sanders claimed victory at a campaign rally in Texas that is one of the 14 states voting for Super Tuesday.
I think all of you know we won the popular vote in Iowa. We won the New Hampshire primary. And according to 3 networks in the AP, we have now won the Nevada caucus.
Nevada offers 36 delegates and 12 superdelegates automatically entering the Democratic National Convention to be held later this year. Now moving on, 96 people have died in the last 24 hours from the new coronavirus in China, increasing the death toll to 2,441. The National Health Commission says over 650 have been confirmed infected, bringing the total number to over 77,000. This report has the details.
Although there has been a decline in coronavirus cases in China, the number of infections in other countries has been rising. Iran has closed schools, universities, and cultural centers in more than a dozen affected provinces to contain the outbreak. Italy has imposed strict lockdown in outbreak hotspots as the number of confirmed infections rose to 79.
In zones considered hotspots, neither entry nor exit will be authorized without special permission.
As fear mounts over the spread of COVID-19 virus, China urges international efforts against the outbreak. Head of Chinese mission to UN in Geneva, Chen Shu, said the coronavirus is a grave test for all countries.
This is a grave test, not only for China, but for everyone in the world, for every country, for the whole international community. I should say we will stand the test, and we are confident because of the strong leadership, because the capability of China to mobilize, as you see, the whole nation to work together to fight against the spread of the virus.
China's economy has also slowed down as the new epidemic closed many businesses, factories, tourist sites, and travel routes in the country.
The US says Russia-linked social media accounts are spreading conspiracy theories about the new coronavirus online. The US Assistant Secretary of State for Europe and Eurasia, Philip Rieker, said the disinformation campaign is disrupting global efforts to fight the epidemic. Rieker said thousands of false personas are being used on social media to promote theories that the US is behind the outbreak. He said Russia's intent is to sow discord and undermine US institutions and alliances from within. Russia's foreign ministry denied the claim, calling the accusation intentionally misleading. The claims circulating online include allegations that the coronavirus is a US effort to wage economic war on China. They also include reports that COVID-19 is a biological weapon manufactured by the CIA. It's time for a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. In Algeria, tens of thousands of people have taken to the streets of capital Algiers to mark the first anniversary of the protests that ousted ex-president Abdulaziz Bouteflika. Scores of Algerians demanded the removal of Bouteflika's allies and more steps towards democracy. They chanted slogans against President Abdelmadjid Tebboune. Police fired water cannon to disperse the demonstrators. The government has cancelled all the trains to the capital to keep the number of demonstrators down. The protesters want transparent elections and a president who represents people. Nearly 2,500 protesters have been arrested over the past year, and hundreds are still in custody waiting for the trial. 9 people, including 3 children, have died after a vehicle fell into a deep gorge in Indian-occupied Kashmir. Police said 5 others were injured in the incident in Katuha district. Officials said the driver lost control of the vehicle, which rolled down into 300 feet deep ravine. They said villagers started rescue efforts before police arrived. In Pakistan, at least 9 laborers have been killed and 7 others injured in a marble mine slide in northern province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Rescue officials say over 30 laborers were working at a marble mine in Bamboka village of Bunaid district at the time of the accident. At least 14 others are feared to be trapped under the rubble. A rescue operation is underway to recover them. Climate change is taking its toll on different parts of the world, and the countries are finding ways to reduce carbon imprints. Now, Norway has come with a new solution to tackle the menace of plastic with recycling. Details in this report.
Every minute, 15 tons of plastic is being dumped in the world's oceans, and the situation is growing from bad to worse. Though Norwegian recycling industry is cognizant of the threats, they think the problem lies not in plastic itself, but in its usage.
I think the big discussion is we have a problem with plastic. Is the problem the plastic itself, or is it the way that we as a consumer behave ourselves?
With a 90% recycling rate, the plastic deposit system is viewed as a key move to the country's success. Customers pay extra cents for plastic bottles and get refund after returning the empty ones. The EU member countries have been given a target to recycle 90% of plastic bottles up to 2029, but Norway is 10 years ahead of the deadline.
EU countries has to return 77% of all the bottles in 2025 and 90% in 2029. And we believe that the only way to achieve that is through deposit systems.
More than 1 billion plastic bottles and aluminum cans were returned in the country in 2018.
Everything which can be returned, I return. I collect everything and I take it to the deposit machine when my bag is full.
Norwegians think people need to work out to keep plastic out of nature.
In Mexico, climate change and water scarcity are forcing farmers to abandon traditional staples like corn in favor of more viable options. Others are giving up farming altogether, selling their fields and leaving their ancestral homelands. More on this report. Corn has been a symbol of Mexican pride for centuries and formed the backbone of the civilization that gave rise to this country. But its future is now in doubt as climate change and endless droughts transform the Mexican landscape.
We didn't get the rain that was supposed to fall in June, July, August or September. And that's what we see now. The maize didn't grow because there was no water.
Mexico is one of the countries most vulnerable to climate change in the Americas. In Puebla State, which is known as the Mexican cradle of corn, cultivation has plummeted by 18%.
We have seen the flora and fauna has changed, and there are longer periods of drought and higher temperatures. During winter, the drops in temperature are harsher, and all that has consequences on the agricultural sector in the region.
Farmers are now turning to less water-intensive crops like pistachio or cactus. Others are selling their fields to real estate developers and looking for other ways to make a living. This phenomenon threatens the country's food supply and is likely to drive up prices of basic essentials. Dancers in elaborate costumes took to the streets of Bolivia's western Oruro town. They performed traditional songs and dances in an annual UNESCO-recognized carnival. This report has the details.
The dancers in garish outfits, masks and hats whirled through the historic mining town of Oruro. The colorful carnival has its origins in the ancient festival of Ito, celebrated by the indigenous Uro people.
I love the Tinku because it is warlike. I think you have to be a little like a warrior in life in order to keep moving forward, and this is a beautiful dance. I've danced in the Tengue Stolka for many years and I love it.
Y es una danza hermosísima.
After the Spanish prohibited indigenous rituals in the 17th century, the event merged with Christianity in a celebration that remains distinctly Adian to this day. The faithful believe that the Virgin of Sukavan has protected the city since it was founded by the Spanish in 1606.
Oruro is the best carnival in the world. It was declared a masterpiece of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity. This is a dance of devotion that we leave at the feet of the Virgin of Sukavan in a sign of faith.
Dancers pay tribute to the town's diversity of communities, fusing indigenous, Spanish, and African traditions.
Britain has criticized the European Union over failing to negotiate a mandate for post-Brexit trade talks. In a statement, Prime Minister Boris Johnson's office said the bloc is being indecisive because different members want different things. Johnson's office said British ministers are united in the government's approach to the negotiations. This statement comes ahead of negotiations between Britain and the EU to determine trade mandate. British ministers will meet on Tuesday to sign off the formal trade mandate document, which will frame its negotiating aims. The European Commission has already proposed a negotiating mandate, which can be signed off by member states on 25th of February. Another weather situation from Alhamdulillah. That's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.